Okay, hello everyone, and welcome to what you need to know about college admissions during the COVID-19 pandemic. My name is Doug Pierce, Associate Editor at Horse's Mouth. Thank you so much for joining us for today's stream. Just a few quick housekeeping things before we launch you into your presentation here. There is a chat panel. If you're watching this from the Savvy College Planning website, there is a chat panel embedded right beneath the player where you can reach out to me if you're running into any technical issues at all, and I want to know about them, so please let me know there. And then beneath the chat panel, there is a Q&A panel, and that's the place to input any questions you have for your presenter, Lynn O'Shaughnessy. That's you want to do it in Q&A. And if you're on Facebook or any of the other social medias, you can just go ahead and ask your question right in the feed there, and I will receive it. But with that out of the way, I will now turn things over to your presenter, the director of the Savvy College Planning Program, Lynn O'Shaughnessy. Lynn?
Well, thanks a lot, and welcome everybody wherever you are. I'm in San Diego right now, and hope you can hear me. We have a lot. I have a lot to cover today. The topic is why isn't this? Well, there it goes. Whew, we don't want to have technical difficulties at the very beginning. But now I seem to have lost the slide mover. That's not good. I hit one and then okay. Well, I'm not sure what exactly to do with. Oh, it just moved. Anyway, hopefully this is not working.
Yeah, if it's not working, Lynn, I can go ahead and
then you'll just have to advance it for me. So sorry, everybody. But my presentation today is on the pandemic, what is going on with that in terms of college. Like everything else in this country, things have been in upheaval in the higher ed world. And so I want to share with you what's going on. And this is relevant for your clients, as well as if you have kids that are going to be heading to college. But before I do that, I just want to talk to you a little about my little pitch, because I'm very passionate about this, is about why it's so important to pay attention to late stage college planning. If you call yourself a holistic advisor, you definitely need to understand the basics of this. And basically what late stage college planning is my definition is when parents are nearing the end of saving for college, how do they stretch whatever they have managed to save as far as possible when contemplating their college costs? Okay, Doug. And I think it is really this late stage college planning represents a huge opportunity. Knowing the nuts and bolts of college, you don't have to get deep in the weeds on this, but just knowing the basics can really boost your bottom line and help you stand out from the crowd. How many people, advisors are always wanting to differentiate themselves, but it's hard to do that when there is, countless wealth managers and retirement planning specialists. But this is an area where it's easy to add this to your own practice and really stand out. And also attract affluent clients, because those are it's those people. I think there's a misconception that, the people who need help with college and need help because they haven't saved enough are lower income, middle income families. But that's not true. Those families typically go to your local regional state schools or community colleges, but it's the more affluent families, potentially attractive clients that are, more ambitious and are looking at a broader field for colleges and realizing some of them, the costs have been really going up and up and up. And this becoming familiar, adding a little college niche to this side of your practice can really open up a whole new world of potential referrals. One thing I wanted to mention about referrals is you can also, among the referrals you can have, is not only from parents or grandparents who've been happy with what you've been able to tell them, but also college consultants. Because college consultants, test prep places, athletic clubs, they don't know anything about the financial side of college at all, but they are eager to find people that do. Okay, so that's something to keep in mind. And you can also, if you add this to your practice, can increase your assets under management. And avoid this terrifying figure, 66%. What is that? That is the percentage of grown children who receive inheritances and then fire their parents' financial advisors. Okay. You don't want to do that, right? So an excellent way to avoid this happening, this 800-pound gorilla, is to learn the basics of late-stage college planning. According to Gallup, 73% of parents say their number one financial worry is paying for college. And it's no surprise because college prices have skyrocketed. You know, the most prestigious schools now cost more than $300,000. This one, I just did a screenshot of it this week. I think this was Yale or Princeton, can't remember which one. But look at the price of that thing. It's like, what, $79,000 for 1 year. 1 year. And can you imagine what that's going to do to blow a budget hole in your client's budget, especially if they have more than one kid? And then, of course, we have a college loan debt crisis, which is just devastating a growing number of families. But so what has even though parents are really interested in this, grandparents are interested in this, this is a great way to get referrals, assets under management. You don't need to get deep in the weeds. And yet, what do we hear from the financial industry? Crickets. Like, they aren't addressing this. Because I think they think, it's just 529 money, it's no big deal. But that's like not what this is all about. It's about building relationships and ultimately getting at their other assets, you know, where the real money is. So if you can help parents and grandparents shrink college costs by easily tens of thousands of dollars or more, you can be a superhero. And as I said, the people who are eager for this advice and who will pay for it are educated, affluent families are the ones proactively seeking answers. And so I think this is an excellent way to attract prospects and evaluate whether they would be good wealth management clients. I happen to, one way that you can jumpstart this, of course, is through Savvy College Planning, which is a great way to share with you what you really need to know. Okay. So now I'm getting into the whole pandemic, which is fascinating. College is always fascinating. It's always changing. And this has been very challenging to keep track of what's going on with this. I'm just glad I'm not a parent right now with a teenager or a college administrator. But the pandemic has definitely made it more value. I mean, more of what am I going to say? It makes it more important to understand what's going on with colleges today. Now, even before the pandemic, prices have been going up, as I said. But what's interesting to see is that the sticker price versus what people pay at private schools, the sticker price and what people pay at state schools is very different. And that's one of the things that I teach advisors is how do you get those better deals? And the deals are going to be better now because of the pandemic at a lot of schools. And you can see here, this is why it's kind of tricky when you're, for people who don't know really much about the college world, is to understand. In this graph, you see one school and all the different prices people pay. Now, you don't want to pay the highest price. You want to have a discount. And so that is kind of the key to all this, is to being able to evaluate school prices. And of course, because of the pandemic, there are going to be better deals at a lot of schools. So after the pandemic hit, many schools were scrambling to lock down their freshman class for this fall. And some schools are still doing that because a lot of schools, they were completely freaking out. And I'm sure there are plenty of schools that are still trying to get kids to sign on to their school. And simultaneously, they're also aggressively recruiting students for the 2021-2022 school year. And some schools are making better offers because they are terrified of not filling their freshman seats, which would be a financial disaster for many, many schools. This was a couple of quotes I pulled out of news. One is from Angel Perez, who was the VP of Enrollment at Trinity College, a fancy, elite, private liberal arts college. And this was earlier in the pandemic, saying, the gloves have come off. You're talking about a scenario where colleges need to enroll students at any cost. So did this is the VP of Enrollment at University of New Haven. It's a free for all. They have to get kids on their campus. It's better to get them, if they have to give them more money than have nobody come in that slot. So thanks to COVID-19, schools are more likely to sweeten offers because they need to attract as many students as they can during this uncertainty. Now, some schools will be more likely to offer better merit aid and financial aid because they are more desperate. I've also seen reports of different things that colleges are doing to lure kids to their campuses, including signing bonuses when they put down a deposit, priority registration, first pick of dorm schools, sweepstakes for free room and board, free 4-credit online summer classes. And at least one school, Davidson, delayed payment for a year for your freshman year of college, which seems crazy because then people are going to have pay 2 years at once. But anyway, they're hoping that will attract kids. And then there's another wrinkle to this. Before COVID-19 hit, the U.S. Justice Department had cracked down on the main college group in this country called the National Association for College Admission Counseling. These guys, NACAC, has this big code of ethics about what schools can do and what they can't do for admissions, right? And the DOJ decided, hey, you guys are being anti-competitive. So they picked the college admission world to crack down on, and they did, and it freaked the colleges out. And because of that, there was an agreement this fall. NACAC agreed, okay, we're going to eliminate some of our code of ethics because the DOJ thought it was anti-consumer. And so these changes, which were taking effect for this 2019-20 admission cycle, this is layered on with what's going on with COVID. So ultimately, it's strengthening families' leverage. And I talked about this in the Savvy College Planning newsletter back in October, where I covered this DOJ settlement, which is is going to be a big deal for families. Most families aren't aware of it. So one of the big things that's gone because of this DOJ crackdown is that colleges can no longer, or the NACAC will no longer prohibit colleges from recruiting students after May 1. Now, that was always kind of the traditional national day of deposit, right? You put your deposit down by May 1st, and then you're going to that school. That is no longer the case. So now, May 1st can come. Maybe a kid has put their deposit down. That doesn't mean all these other schools can't still try to recruit that kid, maybe give them a better offer, So the admission season does not just stop on May 1st, It can keep going on. In fact, the season can last year-round. Recruiters may not stop recruiting students until the school year ends. Students could shop for schools and leave deposits at multiple places as they look for the best deal. So family bargain hunting can happen into the summer, which was, already because of COVID, it makes it even more important that families don't just assume that the first offer is the last offer. Okay, and it could be, that this extended mission season might be problematic for high school counselors. Some have even suggest that there's some advisors who could be created to specialize in negotiating deals after May 1st. I don't know if that's going to happen or not, but these are some of the potential results. So another potential result is students who are unhappy with their initial school may find it easier to find other receptive colleges. And as I said, colleges may actively contact students who even start school elsewhere. And I think this is important, particularly with COVID, because right now we don't know what schools are going to start up in person in the fall or online, or a lot of schools have been saying they were going to do a hybrid, some classes in person, some not. All this is going to leave a lot of unhappy kids and families. So that's just something to keep in mind. Another thing that's now changed is that colleges can now offer special incentives to kids who apply early decision. Typically the early decision is like November 15th, right? If you apply early and say, this is the one school I want to go to, you had a better chance at most schools of actually getting accepted. So now schools can try to entice those early kids with special scholarships or nicer housing or better financial aid packages even. So the potential result of that is colleges can, start offering these better deals. This could make early decision even more attractive. And it could also cause more schools that never did offer early decision to do it. And the benefits of early decision will become stronger. And frankly, this will chiefly benefit high-income students because those are the ones that are taking advantage of early decision anyway. So ultimately, what all this means is and this was somebody who's a vice provost of enrollment management at Oregon State, who's like one of the thought leaders in the higher ed world. He's very highly respected. And he said that those with the greatest ability to pay will likely benefit the most, which means low-income first-gen kids will be stuck holding the bag, and there will be a general downward pressure on net costs for kids who can pay, right? And understand how you can manipulate the system, okay? Another COVID-19 change was the CARES Act. Some of you probably know about. It was signed by Trump on March 27th, and it provides temporary financial help for college borrowers. Basically, what it does is anybody who's behind on their loans are not going to have their wages garnished. Nobody's going to go after them for right now. And also, if you have a federal student loan or a federal parent loan, you didn't have to make any payments through September 30th of this year. And interest was not going to be, accruing during that time. It was kind of like just frozen in place. Now, it would have been good if people could afford to pay it to do so, but you didn't have to. So anyway, once we get to October 1st, then payments are going to start being due again, unless this legislation gets extended. Now, one of the other COVID changes that we're going to see, which isn't a good one, and this affects state universities, state colleges, community colleges, is that, obviously we've taken a gigantic financial hit here. And you can see this chart that when we had the recession back in 2008 and 9, funding for higher education dropped, and it kept dropping, and it has never recovered. So you can imagine what the funding is going to happen to it now, right? With all the pressures that state governments have, all the things they need to be spending their money and getting less revenue. So we can expect that state universities are going to have the amount devoted to that revenue is going to drop significantly, which could impact students trying to graduate on time, trying to get their classes, what kind of classes you're going to have, much bigger classes. It's going to be a mess, in my opinion. Now, what about private schools? Well, private schools have to, generate their own money, right? They're going to be more likely to discount than state universities, right? By discounting, I mean giving more financial aid than might really want to, or merit scholarships. But as I said, the pandemic is generating better awards from many schools and also making appeals more likely. And certainly, I'll talk a little bit about this shortly, is families should consider appealing merit and need-based aid at private schools. You can also do it with state schools. It can be, I think it's going to be a more harder sell with them, because state schools don't have to worry about going out of business, whereas private schools, some of them do. This is a great story. If you subscribe to the Wall Street Journal, I would recommend that you get this article, How to Get a Big Break on the Cost of College, Just Ask. And it came out this summer, I think, end of June. And it's a highly relevant piece on how colleges are discounting in the age of COVID. Now, for affluent families, nearly all private colleges give merit scholarships. This is something that I go into in detail in Savvy College Planning, and what schools give merit scholarships, what don't. There's some prominent ones that don't. But what you need to keep in mind is that affluent families will, in some cases, qualify for need-based aid at expensive schools, private schools, with generous aid policies. The more expensive the institution, the more likely you would get need-based aid. Now, in reaction to this pandemic, Anthony Carnival, or I can never pronounce his name right, but he's a big muckety muck at Georgetown. And he says that because of the pandemic, selective colleges seem likely to double down on their efforts to woo the children of wealthy families. They may even show more favoritism toward those applicants from privileged backgrounds and entice them to enroll by offering them tuition discounts with money that could have gone to kids who actually need it. Well, this is a reality that's been going on for many years. I think the pandemic could actually increase that happening. Now, the average schools before this pandemic hit were already discounting dramatically. The average tuition discount at private colleges is 59.5%, which is a historic high. And that was, released last year. Okay. I'm sure when we have this pandemic era that the tuition discount will be even higher. So, which leads to another question is like, okay, can all of these colleges continue to exist, right? I mean, they're having to give out more financial aid, more merit aid. And I have to say, this is not all schools, right? Like the most prominent, most popular schools, private schools in this country, they're going to get enough applicants no matter what. Okay. But most schools have to work hard to get applicants every year. That's just the reality of the vast, vast majority of private schools in this country. So could some of them go, bust? Yeah, it's true. And I think especially vulnerable target will be small nonprofit colleges. And I think probably dozens of colleges will close. So that's an issue, is like, it can be good to throw a wider net when looking for schools, but you don't want to get a school that is not going to make it. I actually wrote about this whole topic before COVID hit, or before we knew it was a problem that was cutting to our country. On this very issue. This is my newsletter from January, and I talk about this very issue about how to evaluate schools and their financial health. Okay. And one thing that I mentioned in the newsletter was Forbes has a kind of a financial health report card for colleges that they release every year. In fact, they should be, I think they release it in September. So the next one should be coming up, though I don't think it could, reflect what's going on yet because it's such a fluid situation. But that is one way that I tell people that they can look at a school and see, okay, is this school going to be, in financial danger or not? Now, during COVID-19, I think it's especially important that families think about appealing their financial aid packages as well as merit awards. And merit awards, of course, are given without regard to whether you have any need or not. Obviously, COVID-19 has wrecked family finances. Now, financial aid formulas have used, for the 2020-2021 school year, used 2018 income, prior tax returns. That's what families use now. It's been that way for a few years. So, your income from 2018 could be very different from what you're making today or what your clients are making today. Also, awards for the 2020-21 school year and future school years is based on asset values of the day the financial aid forms were filed. Okay, so for many parents, the forms were filed last fall when the stock market was in better shape. So that could be off too. So what are some things you can do? There's a lot you can, talk about in terms of appealing, but I'm just going to bullet point some of them. You don't always need a compelling reason to appeal. Okay, if you are, wanting more merit aid, you don't have to just come up with a compelling reason. Appeals can continue after the official deadline. Remember, I was telling you about May 1st and how that used to be a big deal, and it's not a big deal anymore. Also, and this is something that I go into in depth in my program, Savvy College Planning, is ask how home equity impacts awards. In the program, I talk about how colleges assess home equity in very different ways. And most schools don't use home equity, but about 200 do, and those are the types of schools that kids really want to go to. You should also not use the word negotiate. Admission, financial aid people hate the word negotiate. And if you're appealing for a need-based financial aid, more of that, you should definitely use details. It's actually why you need it. How much income have you lost? What are these big medical bills? Like, be specific. And also make sure you understand an individual school's appeal process, because they can all be have different requirements in terms of appeals. Another way to get more money out of a school is to play schools off each other. This is a really important one. This is a strategy to try whether you're looking for need-based aid or merit aid. You can go to a school and go, hey, my kid wants to go to your institution, but these other schools have better offers. So, and money is tight. And so can you match or beat these other offers? And schools will often ask for your, to send or scan what these other offers are. And it could be, definitely can work in some cases for sure. And probably, as I said, more now with COVID. Now, another COVID change is that before COVID, roughly 75% of students were getting into their first choice college every year. According to every year, the UCLA does a survey of college freshmen, full-time college freshmen attending four-year schools. And every year, that's about roughly the percentage of kids who get into their number one choice, which might seem surprising when you think that, all the media talks about how kids are rejected all the time. That is such a teeny tiny percentage of schools where that happens. For most kids, they're going to get into the schools that they apply to, or most schools they can apply to. Now, this 75% should increase because of the pandemic. Now, another change is this whole test optional phenomena. Test optional admission policies refers to the fact that some schools will say, all right, we're not going to care if you submit your test scores, or we're not going to, your test scores aren't going to be a major factor in whether we, admit you or not. Okay. This, for a lot of reasons, this has been a growing before COVID even. Like the number of 2019 was the biggest year yet for schools saying we're becoming test optional. And now COVID has totally dramatically accelerated that trend. Since COVID, hundreds of colleges have bailed because of uncertainty over testing availability. Because things are shut down, how are you going to take the test? Because they've always been in like high schools mostly. Now these high schools aren't opening, so that the College Board and the ACT Inc. They've been hard pressed to be able to roll these tests out. And if you can't take the test, and we're talking about kids who would be going to, applying for college this fall for 2021, what are you going to do? Okay, so in reaction, many schools have been announcing, if they already weren't test optional, that they become test optional. And these is just a snapshot of schools, national universities that are now test optional. You can see all of the Ivy League schools are now test optional. This just happened this spring and summer. And all, just about any elite school that you can think of is now test optional, at least for this coming year. I think most schools are going to stay test optional. Some have said, well, it's just for this year, or some have said it's going to be a 3-year pilot. The biggest group that said that they were going to be test optional is University of California system, and it looks like they're never going to take that test again. They aren't. They might come up with their own test, but it's kind of unlikely, and that would be a huge blow to the testing industry. Now, research has suggested that test optional policies have benefited higher income kids with lower standardized tests because college has been eager traditionally to enroll them when their test scores won't need to be reported. Now, this is one of the cynical reasons for this. Now, with COVID, colleges say, their main reason is because kids aren't being able to take the test. It's fascinating. That's a fascinating trend that standardized tests aren't going to be an issue for this coming year. And refreshing too, actually. So what does that mean? Well, more students with unimpressive test scores will now aim for elite and highly selective schools that no longer require test scores. Many rising seniors aiming for the schools, some of them probably took the test in March, when it was the last time it was really available. And many of those kids will probably submit those test scores anyway if they're good. And more students will probably aim for elite, highly selective schools that normally would have been out of reach because the kids didn't have they had really good grades, extracurriculars, all that, but they weren't good test takers. Okay, and another COVID change that is happening is that I think more students will want to sidestep all of this uncertainty and just take a gap year. Which means, hey, I want to go to your school, but I don't want to go this year. Okay, so it's likely that schools will be accepting student requests. From what I've been able to read, and I follow the higher ed industry quite closely, it was suggesting that the gap year requests weren't any more than normal. But then I think this is going to change as schools decide, we're not going to be able to open in the fall in the way we'd like. And that's still what's up in the air. A lot of schools had said, yeah, we're going to be open in person. We're going to take all these precautions. Others had said, well, we're going to do a hybrid. Some kids are going to go attend school, but there's going to be online, or some kids will come, but others will be at home, and then they switch. So there's been a lot of, talk about what's going to happen, but, we don't know. We should know soon the final decision of schools. And I think many, many schools are just going to go with, all right, we're just going to do online, at least for this semester. So that's all I was going to talk about in terms of, I'm going to be happy to answer any of your questions about the pandemic or college. I also wanted to talk to you briefly about a way to learn so much more. As you can see, there was a lot there just on the pandemic, right? And there is so much more you need to know about how do you evaluate schools, their generosity, how do you target families to get the best discounts at the kind of types of schools that would give them money. How do you know if you're going to qualify for financial aid, or if you should be looking at merit scholarships money? How do you, investigate schools for their generosity? There's a lot to know, though it's not as complicated as you would think if you go to a source like Savvy College Planning that will help you do it. So I want to briefly talk about what's inside this Savvy College Planning course. This is what the website looks like. You can see all the different tabs and all what you get. I really need to change out my picture on that homepage. One of the things you get is a lot of, I should have got it, it's in my bookcase, but Spiral Bound Savvy College Planning Advisor's Guide, which provides a lot of great information about what you need to know. For a lot of families, and I'm sure for a lot of financial advisors, it all seems mysterious. Like, why does one kid on the block get lots of money from a school and then other kid doesn't? Colleges are businesses, and if you realize that and you understand it, then it becomes very clear. It's almost like you take this class, you'll have this aha moment, like, oh, okay, you get it now. For instance, why a kid, who gets in, I had a friend who's, they're both doctors, and one kid who was brilliant, went to Yale, zero money. The other kid who had good test scores, but was like a 3.0 kid, got close to $20,000 a year to go to University of Redlands. Like, why is that? You completely understand and be able to advise on strategies they should take. Oh, I should say on that, besides the financial advisor guide, we also have a guide about 150 questions actually that your clients might ask. Okay. And then we have a webinar. We have 4 webinars, and you can watch them anytime you want. And then every year I have a couple of I update webinars for things like the pandemic or other developments that happen in the college world every year. And then there's also 4 client presentations with speaker notes that have been FINRA approved that is quite popular. I think they're good looking presentations, and I've gotten great feedback about them. And then this is cool. I love this. Every year, you get scholarship and financial aid resource guides that you can give to your clients, prospects through PDFs. There is one that has 570 major scholarships from over 1,100 schools and all the scholarships from each of these schools. I also have one of these yearly resource guides that provides what are the most generous colleges in America. The ones that meet 100% of financial need are close to it. Okay, that is it. Parents would love to get that resource guide. And then also I have one much smaller list, that the schools that don't offer merit scholarships, because if you have, and this often happens, high income families, and they're not going to qualify for financial aid, but they can't pay full price, which is over, in some cases, $300,000. these are the schools that they shouldn't go after because they don't give any merit money to high income kids. And then I have another one, the Ultimate College List Builder, which I love, which I'll be updating in the fall when the new figures come out from the federal government. But that includes average price discounts at more than 800 schools in the country and what percentage is that money. And I also give a talk about how this all works. Okay. And then you can ask me college questions. If you're a member of the Savvy College Plan, you can ask me college questions anytime you want through the Q&A forum on the Savvy College Planning website. And then you also can take our online exam to qualify for CFP continuing ed credits. And then every month I do a monthly newsletter. I've done it on, you can see I've done some things on COVID, about the latest student loan interest rates, things to know about student loans. I cover a wide variety of topics every month. And then you also get the Savvy Parents Guide to Cutting College. It's 50 laminated, or I don't think they're laminated, but it's very, very heavy stock, 6-sided guides. And there you can just give them out to parents. And then there's also this card you can give out about key college funding data that's updated every year, as is all of this.
Yes, I'd like to say that this was just updated as well. Like just updated.
Oh, okay. Okay, cool. And then you get a marketing toolkit, a 75-page guide. And then, I just wanted to say, I forgot to put the, go ahead, that's fine. I started to put that in and then I forgot to finish it. But anyway, it's one of the, we've heard back from people who really love the course and very happy that they took it. And they've, as I said, all the things that I was mentioning early at the beginning of the webinar, things, the benefits you can get from that, they're experiencing it and they're happy that they added this niche. So what does all this cost? It's $497. Okay. Another way that you can take the course, okay, or another way to significantly jumpstart learning is to take the course, but also attend this upcoming Savvy College Planning virtual workshop that's coming up August 3rd to August 6th. Okay, and as you can see, you can sign up there. What I think is cool about this, yes, it would have been nice to do this in person, right? Which I've done these in person. I've done them in San Diego, Chicago, and Dallas, and it's great. But, you know, it's more expensive doing that, right? Because you have to buy the plane ticket, you have to have the hotel, you have to take time off from your job, your advisory to trek out to San Diego or Chicago, for instance. This, you can actually just do it in your own, your own computer, your own office or home. And it's broken up into about 3 hours a day of sessions. This is just, I have a couple workshops from people who took my class. The workshop was extremely worthwhile and has already brought in a new client who will likely invest several $100,000 with me. The cost of the workshop was paid the following week with new business related to college planning. She just took the class with me last year in San Diego. So obviously that made me very happy. Another guy who took the class in Chicago said the most helpful part of this workshop has been learning all about the different resources out there. They can sometimes be a little overwhelming for parents. Here we can quickly jump online, go through live examples of resources. It's fantastic. So to join the workshop, you would become a Savvy College Planning member, just add on the virtual workshop. So the workshop is a little under $1,200. And if you'd be required to become a member, $497. So your total would be $1,759. If you want to take the workshop and you are a Savvy College member, then you don't have to pay that membership fee. And we've had people take the class who are Savvy College Planning members. And I would love for you to be in the class. I think it'd be great because, it is virtual, but I'm going to be there. It can help get you inspired, answer your questions. And it should be a very illuminating, great experience that can help you jumpstart incorporating some of this into your practice. And I think you will definitely help your own bottom line as well as helping families. So if you'd like to enroll, either as a college planning or that and the workshop, or just the workshop if you're already a member, then you can go on the website or just call. It's actually, I guess it got cut off, but it's extension 1. Oh yeah, it's down below. I would love to have you in the workshop. I'll be answering any of your questions in addition to sharing with you what I know about college and what you need to know about college. So I'd be more than happy to answer any questions that you have now about the pandemic, college, what's going on with college, or with the Savvy College Planning membership or the workshop, if anybody has any questions.
Yeah, Lynn, real quick though, I think your internet's breaking up a bit. I don't know if there's something running on your computer or something. Checking on that, but somebody's asking what's your opinion on advising people to take a gap year?
Okay, well, I got to tell you, if it was me, I would take a gap year, but because it's going to be a lot of money, and likelihood you will not be able to be on campus, right? So and going to be the kind of experience students want. One thing that I would suggest, that if you're considering that, is to ask schools if you could, for instance, take some course at a community college, right, online. More than likely it'll be cheaper, and if they would accept those credits if you then enroll as a freshman. And that's something you need to talk to a school about, because typically you're not considered a freshman if you take classes from another school and then try to enroll as a freshman. Okay, so it would be great to get some credits under your belt for this coming school year, but not at a really high cost.
So another question here, should affluent families try at all for need-based aid? Is there a need for them to do the FAFSA?
Well, okay, that's something that I talk about in my class, right? This is something like, how do you evaluate if you are going to get need-based aid or not? And a lot of families just don't know, really. And also, it also depends a lot on the price of the school. The higher the cost, the more likely you will get need-based aid, and the generosity of a school. And I talk about that a lot in the Savvy College Planning program, in terms of how do you evaluate schools, because you could have, need, maybe it's a very expensive school and you would, get some need, but if it's a school that doesn't give much need, it doesn't really matter. Okay, so one way to determine this, and I do talk about this at length in the class, is a family has to determine what their expected family contribution is, right? And if the expected family contribution is higher than the cost of a school, for instance, there'd be absolutely no point in applying for need-based financial aid, which would mean no need to fill out the FAFSA or the CSS profile, which is the form that many of those popular private schools use.
Okay, let's see here. If a child's college does announce that they are going online only in the fall, do you think that families should use the lack of an on-site experience as a bargaining chip to pay a lower amount of tuition? And if so, how would they do that?
Well, yeah, like I said, you can appeal, like during my presentation, you can always appeal whatever award you got, right? And so you can say one of the reasons is, the experience a child is going to have. Now, whether you're successful or not will, I think, largely depend on how desperate a school is to hold on to that kid, right? So if you're trying to do this with like a state flagship, University of California, Berkeley, or University of Wisconsin, or my alma mater, University of Missouri in Columbia, I don't think that's probably going to work, because hopefully they'll have enough kid, or they would have enough kids that they're not going to have to worry about hemorrhaging students. Maybe Missouri is not an example, but certainly schools like Berkeley or UCLA or University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, places like that aren't going to have any problems. But schools that are worried about, oh my God, we have to fill our freshman slots, particularly private schools, and not private schools, and I'm not talking about Ivy League schools, or, if you look at private schools that have a very high rejection rate, right? Like Stanford's not going to be doing this. Unlikely NYU is going to be doing this. Schools that are quite popular, they don't have to do it because one, though what these schools probably do have is they have a longer waiting list, and they could take kids off their wait lists. So there's probably going to be more of that, of the fancy popular schools, is having a bigger wait list, having a more active wait list in terms of taking kids off. But for most schools, private schools, it couldn't hurt to ask. But I will say, in saying, yeah, it doesn't hurt to ask, and you should ask a school what their procedure are for asking for more money. You also have to realize these schools have fixed costs. They're going to be paying just as much, probably, online as they would the kids were there, and they're going to be losing more money because they're going to not have those auxiliary revenue, like from room and board, right? They still have to maintain the dorms, but they're not getting money, which is something, money that those schools charge more than it costs, for instance, for room and board. So I feel for schools, they're in a really hard place right now. But, so are parents too, and families that are freaked out about what's going to happen.
And another question, could you talk a little more about the strategy of maybe having the child go to a community college or a lower cost college for a year and then transferring to their college of choice after the pandemic is over?
Yeah, that's the tricky part, because I said before, is like, if you go to a community college for a year and then you apply to a four-year school, they could treat you like a transfer student. Transfer students do not get as good a deal typically as 4 years as freshmen do. So that's what and the other issue with transferring is that when you transfer, you can lose credits. So have you spent time taking classes that ultimately the four-year school isn't going to take? So that's why I said, if you are interested in a particular school, you should ask them, hey, can my kid, or can I take some community college classes? Will you accept those and yet still treat me as a freshman in terms of for merit aid and need-based aid?
Okay. looks like that's it for questions, Lynn.
Okay. Well, thanks everybody for joining in. I appreciate it. And I hope I see some of you in Savvy College Planning and or the workshop soon.